First, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Terry Moore, and I'm the Executive Director of the Decatur Prevention Initiative. And we're a nonprofit organization that's provided substance misuse prevention and mental health promotion in Decatur since 1992. As one of the founding members of the Decatur Parents Network, and on behalf of the network leadership team, I would like to welcome all of our members and friends who are with us either virtually or even watching the recording on YouTube later. Now, a little about the Decatur Parents Network. Concerned parents and organizations formed the network in 2016 to help parents support each other and help all our youth make healthier choices and avoid risky behaviors. If you're not currently a member, please join us. Go to our website at decaturparents.net and join us as a pledge member or as a friend. There is never any charge to join the network. It not only provides information and opportunities to connect with other parents, but our members have also proven to be a great support to each other when hard times happen. Please know that we support our members even after their children finish high school. You will see more programming on that in the coming months. Most of our speaker series are recorded and uploaded onto our website and our YouTube channel, along with resources. Tonight's session is being recorded. Please plan to join us next month as we explore more on being the biggest influence for our youth. Tonight's session is a direct result of parent feedback that was gathered through a recent community survey. Many parents expressed concern about substance misuse in our community. And even though our data is showing that we are seeing some decreases in Decatur's youth substance misuse, Decatur still has some of the highest underage drinking and youth marijuana rates in the state. We have been in the top 5 of marijuana use rate among our youth for the last 5 years among all the Georgia school systems. As these youth leave high school, and in some cases home, far too many are becoming more harmfully involved with substances that are possibly life-threatening. We're seeing a lot of fentanyl coming up on the streets, and we want to continue to serve our parents regardless of the age of their children. The leadership team strongly hopes that parents and families need to know that even when addiction does occur, there is hope and there is recovery. There is support and help available. And you'll hear this above us all through the night tonight, that connection is the opposite of addiction. Your input at the end of each session will help us plan as we go through our future events. There'll be a 3-question survey when you leave the Zoom room tonight. Please take a moment to complete that. Susan will have a longer survey that is critical for her to get feedback on, that is listed in the chat room, and that we will also send you probably tomorrow via an email. This month is National Recovery Month, and tonight's topic is the science of addiction recovery. This presentation is not about any specific individual or family, although our community, like many others, has been impacted by addiction. Some here tonight may be directly impacted by the addiction of someone you know or love. Please note this Georgia Cares line for anyone who may want more information or support. There are additional support programs for parents and families, virtual and in person, if you need them. And we're going to have resources that are shared tonight, but you can always reach out to us through our website. And some of us have had different experiences, and maybe we can point you in some different directions. The topic tonight focuses on the science of addiction recovery. Today, over 25 million Americans successfully manage their addictions. Tonight, we will learn how, very much like other chronic health conditions, this physical, emotional, and social health condition can be addressed. And this is going to be shared on our YouTube channel as soon as we can get it up. If you can hold your questions, I believe, until after the presentation, and you can either put them in the chat room or in the Q&A box, and Susan, Tiffany, and I'll help monitor that for you. We are fortunate tonight to have a Decatur-based professional to help us guide us in learning more about recovery. Our speaker, Susan Morley, may be familiar to many of you. Susan is a certified addiction recovery empowerment specialist and a certified peer specialist in addiction. As a person in long-term recovery herself, she helps parents navigate the process of recovery. She is also a local parent coach. She can be found working with young people in the schools and in the community. She's also the mother of 2 girls, one of whom is a junior at UGA and one who's still at DHS. She is an avid tennis player and is really missing all these face-to-face events, guys. So I know she would rather be in front of a live audience in your home tonight rather than Zooming it. She has been an active member of the Decatur Parents Network and a strong supporter of the Decatur Prevention Initiative for many, many years. Welcome tonight, Susan Morley. Susan, take it away.
Gosh, thank you so much.
Wait a second. Poll.
Yeah.
Tiffany, poll. You guys could laugh at me. I write it all down and then I forget one thing.
That's good. Let's get the poll.
Yes. If you're a parent, can you just indicate what grade level your children are in? We just kind of like to know who we've got on the line with us.
Terry, I just want to let you know I'm not allowed to vote, or else I would.
I know, me either. And I do know that with Zoom, if you're on the phone, sometimes it's not easy to vote. But we'll give that another 30 seconds or so and then move. Tiffany can show us, Susan, who we've got in the room.
Okay, good. Let's see. Oh, nice. Well, that's perfect. When you say, Terry?
Yes. It's great to see that we have parents represented from middle school all the way to over 24 and those emerging adult populations. So particularly pertinent to them. Take it away, Susan.
Thank you so much. And I am going to share my screen now. And my sound should be sharing. Well, I'm going to have to do it. We practice and practice, Terry. Here we go. So I want to just start by saying welcome. Thank you so much, Terry and Decatur Parents Network, for having me here. This is National Recovery Month. I don't know if y'all are aware of that, but September is National Recovery Month. And Terry and I tend to get together and do something at the very end of every September. I'm not sure what
next year.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it at the beginning next year.
Well, we do have overdose awareness, like right at the very end of August. So yeah. That's
true. So yeah. So this is for everyone. And so I hope you keep that in mind as we go through our time together today. So I just want to take a moment and have just a moment of silent stillness. Maybe you're going to think about someone you love who's affected by substance use. Maybe it's you. Just send some supportive wishes to those who are suffering, or maybe just share some gratitude for all the bounty that exists in our lives. We'll just take a moment. Thank you very much. I want to, the noise should stop in a second here. Okay, so I want to acknowledge that experts put this information together. George Brott, he's a mentor of mine, and Faces and Voices of Recovery is just an amazing resource, and we'll give you that information at the end too. So we have three, well, first let's get real centered here. This is our schedule. And so we want to make sure we're really focused on the presentation today. Also, when you were having your moment of silence, if you have someone in mind that you want to think about, or if there's really a reason that brought you here today, I have a poker chip. It's a chip to indicate my time in recovery. I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is that it's been over 27 years since I've used any alcohol or drugs to help me manage life. And I'm very excited to share the message of hope that there is in recovery with you today. So if you just look around, maybe it's a picture on your wall, or just hold someone in your heart as we're in this presentation today and help you stay focused and present for this important and hopeful presentation. Okay, so somebody in the chat, I want, and we'll be working a little bit with the chat. I would love for someone in the chat to tell me what you see in this picture. What is it that you see? And obviously it's a cow, but it's a special kind of cow. Does somebody want to talk to me about what kind of cow that is? Well, yes, it is a cow with a cross on it, but what would you call that? Anybody? Yes. Holy cow. I love that. Thank you, Becky. Yes. So this is a holy cow. And what I would like for you, as often happens in recovery, I hope that over the next 40 minutes or so, you'll have at least one more of these holy cow moments. Creating opportunities for discovery and learning discovery is a key to how recovery happens. Thank you, Becky. Okay, be ready for the chat because I'm going to come at you in just a few slides for something else. So let me close that. Oh, there we go. So we've got three key takeaways here.
Come with us and find the pleasures of the journey to the center of the mind.
That's Ted Nugent. Thanks, Ted.
Come along if you care. Come along if you care.
He's telling us that all is in the center of our mind, and like other preventable, treatable, and chronic health conditions, addiction and recovery affect the brain, mind, and behavior. And recovery requires daily and sustained engagement and connections. So those are really important takeaways. The third takeaway is that, like other preventable, treatable, and chronic health conditions, there is a lot of hope. As Terry said, over 25 million Americans are in long-term recovery, and we carry the message of hope and expect recovery. So after this presentation, you will all be able to do these. I don't have to read them to you, but I want to tell you that this is an exciting time for people in recovery, their families, and others who want to talk about the alcohol and drug challenges and recovery progresses that they are experiencing. By talking openly, by coming to this presentation, by viewing it with your family and friends, you can help reduce and eliminate the stigma by making a difference in how people think about addiction and recovery. Talking about recovery from a science-based perspective helps people feel okay about asking for support and help. We referenced the CARES Warm Line earlier, and I'll show you that again later. This information and our stories also help us to educate and motivate our elected officials to change our public policies and laws so that both people seeking and those in recovery are treated with dignity and fairness. And I will say, we do a good job in Georgia with that. So Houston, there's a problem. And what is the problem? The problem is that addiction is a chronic health condition. So what is the solution? We need to listen to recovery stories of the benefits of sustained connections. And this is why I do the SOAR presentations, to connect you to faces and voices in recovery. So now we're going to have a little test. Don't worry, don't worry. You're not going to get graded. So I want you to just get comfortable, and I want you to place both of your feet on the floor. Got that? Now lift your right foot off the floor and make a several clockwise circles. Just keep making those clockwise circles. And then with your right hand, over this way, I'm not sure how this works, draw the number 6 in the air with your right hand. And if your foot stopped or changed direction, hey, recovery is possible for you. That's awesome, right? So we're going to apply the SOAR, and we're going to talk about the recovery progress. Now, this is where I'm going to have you go into the chat. Okay, so get ready, get your fingers ready. If you're on a cell phone, I hope it works for you. So I want you to, in the chat, answer this question. What do you think? Based on research, what percentage of people who achieve 1 to 3 years of abstinence do not return to alcohol or drug use? Let me see what y'all are thinking. A, 26, B, 36, C, 66, or D, 86. And you just say A, B, C, or D if you want, doesn't matter. Okay, thank you. Joan, Terry, Amy, thank you. Let's get a few more. We have one big optimist. Okay, are y'all ready to see the answer? Let's see, anyone else? Hi, Nia, so good to see you. Thank you. Hi, Becky. Oh my gosh, all these people I know. Okay, ready? Oops, I'm pushing the wrong button again. It's C, 66. So those of you, if you did 66, I want you to put your right hand in the air and stretch and pat yourself on the back. Great job. Can you tell I taught kindergarten, 4th grade, 5th grade? So here's what I usually get asked. A key question is, how long does recovery take? And what we know is that if you can get 1 year, then you have a 36% chance of adding another year. And then the question we asked was, if when you're in that 1 to 3 year mark, you've got a 66% chance of adding another year to your recovery, of abstaining. And look at this, guys. After 5 years, only 14% of people resume their alcohol or drug use. Now you'll see AOD on the slides. That means alcohol or drug use. And the point is, as you can see, recovery takes time. It takes years, not 28 days, not 2 months, years. So it takes time, but recovery can happen. So here's also what recovery on average looks like. So when you hit that 1 to 3 mark in the middle there, you see that when you're getting better housing, your employment is increasing, but look what happens in that 4 to 7 years. You need 4 to 7 years on average before your social, mental, and physical health is stable, and that individual is able to earn a living wage where they're paying their bills and they have some fun money. Again, recovery takes time. So, oh my gosh, if I had $1 for every time I was asked this question, I would definitely have $1 million. Why is it that some people are unable to stop alcohol or drug use despite the fact that their lives are crumbling around them? Well, that's what we're going to answer next. So what I want you to keep in mind throughout this presentation, that our behavior is always a function of people interacting with the environment. So our tendency is to say, oh my gosh, why can't he stop? What's wrong with him? He's weak-willed. But that's not really what's happening. The point is that our or drug users' living spaces or environments contribute significantly to continuing the drug use, even when severe consequences are knowingly ahead. So there's a genetic contribution to how the brain behaves or reacts to alcohol and other drugs. But there's also an environmental condition and maybe even events that can be very powerful triggers that can influence or promote drug use or recovery. And often it's both genetics and those environmental contributions. So let's take a peek. I love these slides. The fMRI really helped us understand a lot about the brain, and we're learning a lot about how drugs and alcohol affect the brain because of this wonderful technology. So a brain on drugs, I want you to take a look. First of all, cocaine lasts in the brain, one kind of sniff or snort of cocaine, about 20 minutes, okay? So we're looking at this slide, and it depicts images of a brain taken at different intervals following the administration of a radioactive cocaine. So we could see it on the slide. So within 5 to 6 minutes, this brain is much more excited than before the drug was used. You can see that, lots of yellow in there. It's all lit up. Some people love this feeling. Some people are like, no, this is too much. I don't like it. But here's what I want you to really notice. Before the cocaine was used here, and then 25 minutes later, get ready in the chat, look at here. Someone share in the chat, what's the difference in the brain before the drug was used, after all the cocaine has left the brain? What do you notice? Does anybody want to pop in? Or if a panelist wants to pop in, what do you notice about this brain? Here's before, then it's got the cocaine on these. Now the last bit of the cocaine is leaving. Now there's no cocaine. I'm going to pop in because I know we're on a time schedule. So here's what it is. This brain has less activity. Yes, lack of activity. This has less activity than before the cocaine was used. After the dose, the brain is less active than before. So you need to keep that in mind here. This is really important. So, oh, it went backwards. Let's try again. So people vary in what they find pleasurable because of how their brains react to experiences. So some of us would love to jump off a cliff with a rope and do exciting things. Some would just like to snuggle on the couch and read a book. So our personal preferences create an opportunity for us to seek certain environments. So why do we use alcohol and other drugs? Well, people use alcohol and other drugs because of what happens in our brains. So if there are questions, you can pop them in the chat now, because I can jump back and answer them, but I'm going to keep moving. But you can always just pop a question in there and I'll take a look. Because I want to move on to applying the science of addiction recovery, and we need to really look at the brain. So for real, I hope you're not on your phones, because we're going to have to use our brains a little bit for this. So I keep pushing the wrong button. Look at that beautiful photograph of a brain. So it weighs about the same as a bag of sugar. That's how much our brain weighs. Now, these are some important little good facts about the brain, but look at the bolded part there. There's an estimated 100 trillion connections among the neurons in our brains. These neurons actually grow connections to other neurons. And at the same time, those connections can wither and die. So this picture shows the connections or networks of information flow around the brain. And these networks just go all over, front to back, crisscross, they go all around. And every time we have an awareness of sensory information, or we learn something, a connection either is started, or maybe if we repeat an experience, we burn those neural pathways in deeper. Our brains are built to monitor our environment via our senses, recognize patterns, detect changes in those patterns, and make maps and meaning out of our experience. And guess what? This doesn't even have to be something that we intentionally learned. So right now, think about it. You probably have a specific image stored in your brain that you didn't have 20 minutes ago. All I have to do is say, holy cow, and it comes readily into your mind. And now you probably can't not see that cow with the cross on its forehead. The brain is amazing. So it's responsible for initiating and controlling all of this that's on the slide here. All and everything that it does, it makes up the human experience. Brain development begins soon after the ovum is fertilized, and then it just keeps growing and multiplying and grouping together until it forms the communication channels we saw on that previous slide. So changes in our bodies, how we think, and the emotions we feel are caused by changes in the connections of our neurons. And here is the really important part about this. Especially important is adolescence. that transitional period during which the child is becoming, but is not yet an adult, while some adult-like abilities have emerged. So that from that year 10 to 25 is really crucial. So let's talk a little bit about adolescence. So brain development, meaning the growth, pruning, and connections among brain cells, levels off for a while around the age 15. So it's not fully developed yet, but some of the adult-like abilities listed on the slide are affected. Now, I really want you to pay attention to this one right here, selective and divided attention, because that's what I'm going to talk about. If you think just for a moment, how does the little toe on your left foot feel? We have that, right? You know how that feels. And you're probably thinking a lot about that little toe. And so until your attention shifts, you're going to still be very aware of how that little toe feels. So that's that selective and divided attention that it talks about. Our brains are always monitoring internal and external environments for signs of danger. And that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from. So much stress because of seen and unseen dangers, especially right now during a pandemic. Storing memories of patterns of significant changes that occur, including emotional responses to those changes. And we're just unaware of this happening most of the time. So our environment automatically grabs our attention and we're not able to control much of what we pay attention to. This diverting of attention happens unconsciously and can interfere with our ability to stay focused on important or complicated tasks. Much as happens, and this has all happened to us, whenever our or someone else's cell phone rings, we can't not notice it. So another important capacity that is developing is self-reflection or metacognition. Now we can think about how we are thinking and how we feel. If you had an emotional reaction to something, then you might be hyper focused if there were people around you, and you might be afraid that somebody noticed, and then you'd feel embarrassed, and then you can't, it's hard to stop thinking about that thing that happened. The point is that we often think about our own thoughts and emotions and what other people think or feel about our behavior. We will come back to this idea. So the new cognitive abilities, they're underdeveloped, but they could lead to two problems. Now, most people eventually grow out of these problems, yet some of the characteristics may not go away completely. So the heightened means we think like pointing right. Experiences are unique, and there it is right on the slide. We as their parents can't understand what it feels like, or we can't get pregnant or an STD. We're just going to do it once or twice, or I'm never going to get caught if I drink and drive. Of course, we know that's not true. So I just want to show this slide very quickly. As the brain develops, or with the age, the brain is developing more. And in that blue is when it's really the most mature, but you can see that's when in the 20s. So brain development is associated with adult abilities, but it's not complete until the mid to late 20s. And alcohol and other drugs slows that development. And sometimes it can be permanent, not to be super scary. So really quickly, I just want to tell you how the brain does all of this, okay? So with individual neurons that produce neurochemicals, and these specialized cells communicate with each other through neurotransmitters. And as I mentioned before, experiences and learning cause those connections and strengthening. So addiction starts in the brain. The key is, as it registers what is occurring, powerful emotional memories of both fear and pleasure drive survival and behavior in all of us. So with addiction, the whole system changes so much that we crave the very thing that is potentially harming us. So let's take a look at what happens with all these chemicals in our brains. So if you look at these really quick, this is a study that was used, they used rats. They withheld food on the left, and then when they provided the food, the dopamine increased from 100 to 150. All right, that's a lot of pleasure right there. Really, really good pleasure. Now let's look at sex. Okay, double. It is like, well, okay, this is a very important thing. It's more pleasurable than food. So it's a good thing. You get rewarded because you need to eat to survive and you need to reproduce to survive. So that's good. Well, let's take a little peek at amphetamines. The dopamine spiked in the upper left-hand square there to just over 1,000. In fact, 3 out of the 4 drugs on this slide, the dopamine spikes to levels above normal survival behaviors like eating and sex. So how does our brain adapt to alcohol or drug use? When you use, it changes your neurotransmitter levels. So then the brain says, whoa, we need to stop neurotransmitter production so that we can get balanced here. And then what ends up happening is you have that reduced brain functioning, just like in that slide, and that creates craving. And if you continue to use that alcohol and drug, what happens is you develop a tolerance for that drug because of the changes in your brain. So what happens in addiction is that the primitive survival parts of the brain are changed so that the drug seeking overrides the factual memory storage of the other parts of the brain. You get hijacked. And the logical reasoning of the prefrontal cortex, and that's in the beginning, that's the front of the brain right here. And remember, this is the last part to get developed. And it's not fully developed till 25 or older, okay? So that part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, is now offline, and now the non-survival behavior that's been hijacked in the middle part of the brain, that takes over. So then you have promises made but not kept, obligations that are unmet, and trying to quit over and over, and it's not logical or appropriate. But now it becomes explainable. So why do people return to alcohol or drug use if they do stop? Well, remember, we talked about this, it's our environment, right? So we've got behavior equals our environment. So the external and internal triggers can set off a psychological chain reaction from the brain or body. So these are some examples of those triggers. It's almost like Pavlov's dog. And we don't always know what the trigger is. We might have no idea what triggered us. Here are some examples of other triggers. And remember, this is not about someone being weak-willed or not able to just say no. This is a very serious part of what is learned in the brain. And it's really helpful to understand this if people begin in recovery, and for us to have compassion for those struggling with substance use disorder. So, oops, I went back, sorry. Genetics and other factors also contribute to vulnerability and what happens in the brain. So sometimes we're just kind of set up for this to begin with. So the desire to repeat an experience over and over, either in anticipation of re-experiencing the perpetually elusive level of pleasure that is stored in memory, or as an effort to ward off sickness, that's very important to understand. Now, this cartoon is very dated. I want to apologize for that, but we could substitute our cell phones for the PlayStation withdrawal. But substance use disorder can, these are some characteristics of it. And so we know that prolonged alcohol or drug use can cause physical and functional changes in the brain. It literally changes the brain. But do not worry, because recovery is real. And I'm going to move quickly on these, because you can see this brain before methamphetamine. Here's 1 month after stopping using methamphetamines. And on the far right, you can see that after 14 months, the brain is a lot closer than before the methamphetamines were used. And so here's another slide here that shows another example of how recovery is real, and we can see it in the brain. Look, 100 days of abstinence, it's not up to normal levels, but boy, is it better than just 10 days. So brain adaptation accounts for drug intoxication and withdrawal, tolerance and wanting to use, and cravings or relapse, setback, and needing to use. And it also is responsible for recovery. So we're going to talk quickly about some recovery capital. And this is really the meat of why I'm here today. We can compare substance use and other chronic illnesses like hypertension, diabetes, and asthma. And here's why. Because they have these similarities. They are illnesses, they're influenced by genetics, experiences, environment, they are chronic, and even though the cures are rare, there are effective treatments available. So what we found through research is that relapse rates are similar for addiction and other chronic health conditions. In fact, look at that. Drug dependence, it actually does a little better. This comes from the Journal of American Medical Association, showed that relapse rates for people who manage their recovery on a daily basis did better than people with hypertension, asthma, and almost as well as people with diabetes. So we can expect recovery because the brain has a remarkable ability to change and heal. That's recovery. It just takes time, and one's experiences or environment after are out of the body matters. So it takes time, like I just said, for the brain to heal and adapt and replace those responses to any triggers and learn new ways of experiencing pleasure. So managing recovery or healing and rewiring the brain can be done. So in the recovery process, people return not only to physical health again, but to wellness, reuniting with family, friends, and community, and establishing social connectedness. Personal environmental resources for initiating and sustaining recovery. This is so important to understand. Everybody's different, so there's cultural and individual variability. And recovery capital interacts with situation and problem severity. It shapes selection of intensity and duration of recovery supports needed at that specific point in the recovery process. And as Terry mentioned at the very beginning, the opposite of addiction is connection, not abstinence. So now I'm going to share with you, you might want to take some screenshots coming up. I would love for you to take a screenshot right here of this one. So we're going to talk about recovery capital and that there are many pathways. And here we are. So many, it's like a menu of options. There is not one right way. There's no wrong door as long as the person feels that it's right. He is or she is experiencing progress. And if one pathway doesn't work, you can try another one. And I want to share with you, again, this is the CARES warm line. This is amazing. Screenshot this one. I want everyone to screenshot it, look it up, put it on the phone, put it on your cabinet. This is great support for anyone who needs someone to talk to. It's called the CARES warm line. I also want to share that more capital recovery are also people in recovery, family members, friends, peers, and allies. And then we're going to give you all this information, but we've got national, state, and local organizations. You can screenshot this page. We've got a chat here. Oh, thank you so much, Tiffany. Tiffany has put this information in the chat for y'all. So you can just grab it from there as well. So in closing, because I know we need to get to some questions. I know I rushed a little bit there at the end. Okay. So our 3 takeaways are: addiction, like other chronic health conditions, affect the brain, mind, and behavior. And that recovery, very much like other chronic health conditions, requires daily management. And our main takeaway is that hope is everywhere, because over 25 million Americans, like me, are in long-term recovery. And so the last thing I'm going to ask you to do in the chat is to please write your most significant takeaway from today. Just put it right there in the chat for us. So I want to leave you with this. Do what works for recovery. Struggling to stop or to get someone else to stop can make you sometimes feel like the frog and sometimes like the crane. So try this approach. And as I leave you, I want to remind you to please complete the feedback form. Tiffany's going to put that in the chat. And then Terry has one for you too tonight. And I want to thank you so much for your attention and participation. And if you go to parentcoachatlanta.com/SOAR, SOAR, we'll do this for you. So let me just put that music off. Okay, Terry, I will stop sharing now. And that's for you to take over, I think.
And yes, we are back. Thank you so much, Susan. You know, I don't want to quite say it this way, but you know, yeah, you're looking at when you say, why don't you quit? When you look at the rates, how it gears the brain up, but if you compare it to sex, that is something that a lot of, I told a police officer one time who said, why don't they just quit? And I says, I'll tell you what, the last sex you had is the last sex you'll ever have. And then you say that to somebody who's in recovery and their brain is gearing up even more over that. And I think that's something that the common average person can understand a little bit more of. If you love me, you'll stop. It's not that simple. I see we have some comments in here. One from Laura about the opposite of addiction being connection. I think she really liked that. And Nia may want you to say a little bit more about how long it takes for the brain to heal, Susan.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's a little bit different. We have to remember that everyone's individual, but yeah, it does. Nia noted it takes a lot longer than we think. We think, well, 28 days. Well, the insurance company came up with 28 days, not the scientists. So keep that in mind. And that's why when families, children, teenagers, parents, whoever is coming home from treatment, et cetera, they need to come home to a home that's going to support their recovery. So it's not about dumping all the alcohol into the sink, although that is helpful, but it's about changing your playmates, your playgrounds, right? You need to really immerse yourself in recovery. That's why the recovery there's a wide variety of support groups for people in recovery, and that's why they're so successful.
Yes, those were some numbers. I mean, I knew it took a long time. And I knew that it takes a long time before you can learn, and it takes a long time for things to get out of your brain just so you can learn new information and skills. But that recovery is possible. And someone mentioned that drug use also affects the emotional development. That was a comment that was a takeaway for them.
Yeah, I mean, it can pause it, but it can also arrest it. Like, you know, if it's not taken care of, some people, they may not be able to mature to where they would have if they weren't using drugs or alcohol.
Great. And I'm trying to see if we have any other questions or comments on this. And guys, again,
we have a smart recovery facilitator joined us. Yeah,
Yay.
Terry, a smart recovery person joined us. That's so great. Thank you for all that you do facilitating those smart recovery groups. That's awesome.
Could you say something about that, Susan, in case someone doesn't know what that is?
Smart. It is it's a, I will say, a more scientific, logical. It's not going to be a spiritual 12-step group, but these are people who are very committed to recovery, and they take a more scientific approach. And I'm so glad that the information provided in this webinar is going to support that group. So thank you so much, Joan. And then he says, any recommendations for finding other teens in recovery? My daughter is coming home from treatment on Friday. Okay, well, congratulations on that homecoming. Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much. I would love for you to email me, because I can help connect you. Susan@parentcoachatlanta.com. So email me. Let me write this if you want to know, because it's going to take too long to talk about it. I put the wrong, anyway, .com. You know, I messed it up. Okay, Terry.
And there are a lot of parents, and this is one of those things that one of the reasons that we wanted to do this is that this is things that it's not anything that you as a parent or anybody else should be embarrassed or ashamed of. That this is why we formed the Parent Network, was because, and I know Nia is on here. Nia is one of our original founding members. We formed this network so that parents could talk to each other. And so we could say, hey, do you know anybody else who's going through recovery? You know anybody else whose kid's been through treatment and trying to find other sober friends and clean friends? So the reason we formed this network is so that we could network with each other, not just in the good days, but also in the hard times. And there are a lot of folks in our community who have experienced those hard times and are out there for support, and maybe we can help you link up with some of those. So I'm trying to see if there's, thank you for being willing to be one of those people, Susan. And there are parent support groups, youth support groups. Also, to say that there are some things going on at the Student Center at the high school that you might want to check in with them if your child, for the parent who asked, if your child is someone who goes to Decatur High School, you might reach out to them and see what they have too. Great. I see she is at DHS. Fonta High, who was one of our speakers last month, actually specializes in young people in recovery. And so she would be a great one for you to reach out to and see if there are some programs there that might be helpful, because that's a hard time coming back into a school system if you've been out at residential treatment. And I think the more that we talk about this, the more that we talk about this stuff, High, H-I-G-H. Let me see if I can type it in.
I got it.
The more that we talk about this and talk about hope and recovery, and that there are people, I mean, you can find, 100 people in Decatur who can tell you what their favorite craft beer is. But when you start talking about who do you know who's in recovery, who's willing to talk about this, that is something that we have just been much more reluctant to bring out of the shadows. And so I think it's very important that those of us, for me, I'm also a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is I think it's over. I'm like Susan, I'm right around 27 years. And we all approached it differently. And for our kids to see that there are people who get in recovery, stay in recovery, and that there is hope. And if we don't share that hope out there, that all our kids ever hear us say is don't do drugs, but oh my God, if you get in trouble, there's no hope. And we need to make sure that we all know that there is hope. Okay, I'm off my subject.
Well, I want to share with you, Terry, and anyone else who's still listening to us, that I just came back from a conference last week, expanding recovery for young people. It was amazing. And one of the things I learned is that when kids learn, kids meaning teenagers, the group that is represented here, when they learn about what I showed you about the brain and how things affects the brain, that really helps them make better choices. Because it's not about morals. It's not about what some higher power wants you to do or not do, or what your parents, God forbid, want you to do or not do, because you know they're going to want to do the opposite. But this is, anyway, it was an amazing conference. Share this information with your teenagers, because they're smart enough to understand brains and how this works. And it really helps them understand. I mean, the studies are super clear, Terry, and you know this. The longer kids wait to experiment with sex, drugs, and alcohol, the longer they wait, the lower the chance that they will have problems with those substances or things. And the reason is because the brain is more developed. When you have the shock to the system that is cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, which is a different category, but it's still, when you have that at a young age, it leaves an imprint, and it's like, wow, because the brain is still developing, as we talked about. So it's not about don't you dare do drugs. It's about informing them, look, I want to protect you. The longer you wait, the better your outcome is going to be. We've got the statistics. We know this. This is science.
Thank you so much on that, Susan, and reminding. And for any of you who want your children or young adults to watch this, we will have it up on our YouTube channel, so that they can hear it. They can hear it from their YouTube channel, because I'm seeing that Laura is asking, are there events like this to attend with your child so they can hear it from someone other than their parents? Well, they can watch this YouTube for sure, Laura, and that's something that that's one of the reasons why we're trying to put in some things that are appropriate, not just for parents, but also for teens. And so, yes, please share this with your family. And you can also reach out to us, and if you need more resources than that, just reach out and ask us. We've got a whole bunch of folks who will be happy to give you some other ideas about that.
Mm-hmm. And the Decatur Parent Network, we have coffee chat, or did anyway, check out that website, because we really get together and we kind of group according to grade levels a little bit. And it's just amazing the connections you make. And there's so many more people who are really concerned about this and want to do something, but they don't necessarily want to be like teetotal or goody two shoes. We don't have to be. We can talk about this like grown-ups and support each other. And that's what the coffee chats and the Decatur Parents Network really has done a great job with that. So please join Decatur Parents Network.
And I see, Susan, that Amy is asking about your comment about, you mentioned sex and alcohol, and then you said something about marijuana.
Well, marijuana does hit different parts of the brain. And the problem is that it's hard to get a lot of research on that, because there's so many different strains. So as soon as they spend a lot of money and do a lot of research on, I honestly don't know what a strain is, like strain A, then there's like strain B through double Z and so it's really hard to get research on exactly how it affects the brain.
Well, and that's one where, Amy, you may want to reach out to me. I'm a member of a group in Georgia that has been looking at some of that. And we do have some good information out there on marijuana. And the marijuana of the 70s, back when I was in college, was an average of about 3 to 5% THC. And now with some of the concentrates that are being sold, not yet in Georgia, but it's coming, some of the THC contents are over 90%. And so even the research that we do know and that we have long-term on, we have no clue what a 90% concentrate is going to do to a 15-year-old brain. However, we are going to cover that some more in some of our future sessions. But reach out to me and I'll be happy to share some of that information with you.
Yeah,
And
sorry I cut it out there, but yeah.
you're doing good. And guys, I'm glad to hear some of you are saying you'll definitely join the parent network. We're just a group of volunteers trying to do the best we can, but we do have over 440 members and 300 friends. And if you get active, one of the things that you do have access to is our directory. Now that we've gone over to Google, it's much easier to access our directory. And thank you, Kate, for that, one of our volunteer extraordinaires. And so if your child wants to go to a party this weekend, you can check and see if their parents have already signed the pledge and are sort of the same mindset, or who in the neighborhood has kids that are your age, because as they grow older, you tend to have less connections than maybe you did when you were in middle school. So I want to thank everybody, and especially thank Susan. She's always a wonderful source of information for us. And thank you for helping us wrap up Celebrating Recovery Month. And if you guys could take a brief moment as you get ready to leave the room, please fill out a survey, and then we'll be sending you Susan's survey if you didn't